All right, we will go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar with Singlewire software. My name is Mallory Buttram and I am the marketing coordinator with the Impact Growth Group at Keller Schroeder. I'll be facilitating our webinar today and monitoring your questions in the chat. As a reminder, everyone was muted upon entry, so please post any questions you may have in the chat section and select either all participants or all panelists when sending questions. So a quick rundown on how today's going to work. I'll introduce our team of experts we have on the call with us. Then I'll hand it over to Singlewire, who will cover the presentation and demo portion, and then we'll answer all your questions at the very end. And before I introduce our team, your free gift for attending today is an Ultra wireless charging speaker. If you stay for the duration of the webinar, your Keller Schroeder account manager will be sending you one of these. As a reminder, if you do not have a Keller Schroeder account manager, or if you're unsure of who your account manager is, please request for someone to follow up with you after the webinar concludes. So joining us today, first and foremost, we have our presenter, Pat Shekel. Pat is the Executive Vice President of Product Management and Marketing at Singlewire Software. Pat has been with Singlewire since 2010 and is responsible for the product roadmap for the InformaCast emergency mass notification system. Prior to joining Singlewire, he spent 1 year in the IT value-added reseller industry with a focus on business communication and collaboration. Pat speaks frequently about solving business problems and mitigating risk using mass notification, and of course, is an all-around good guy. We also have with us today Court Howard, who is Territory Manager at Singlewire, and Monica Brent, a Senior Collaboration Consultant here at Keller Schroeder. Monica and Court join us from the technical side to help with any questions we may have towards the end. So without further ado, I will pass the ball to Pat, and he will take over from here.
A number of things. Sure. All right. Hopefully we're not getting any echo now. And let's reshare the screen and we'll get back to it here. Sorry for the little technical trouble there at the beginning. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about mass notification in terms of what's happening in the landscape today. Obviously, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and so communication needs have changed pretty significantly in the past several months. And we're going to talk about how mass notification fits into that, the importance of getting in touch with your people wherever they are in real time. We're going to show you some of the messages that our customers are sending out to their end users. And we're going to talk about how that transitions then into the future landscape and how Singlewire's InformaCast platform fits into all of that. We'll also give you a demonstration. That's why I'm sitting in this room, which looks like a converted Radio Shack, but it is really meant to be used to demonstrate how the software comes into action. And that's really the sizzle of the steak, if you will. So the presentation is nice. It's nice to know what our people are sending and that sort of thing. But it's really fun to see the software in action. So we'll get to that before too long here. So a little bit of background, if you don't know who we are, Singlewire Software is based in Madison, Wisconsin. We have about 110 people, about 85 of which work here in Madison and the rest around the country and a handful in the UK. We've been at this for quite a while. The product InformaCast has been out for nearly 20 years. And so we have more than 7,000 customers in 50 countries. And really what we try to do is solve business problems in the form of getting urgent communications out to people through a wide variety of channels. And that'll become abundantly apparent as we go through. So I'm going to show this graphic now. I'll come back to it at the end. It just kind of sets the stage for, you say, what is it that you do? We send text, audio, and images from the things on the left to the things on the right. So you can trigger from a wide variety of methods, both manual, such as hitting a button on a phone, which I'll do right now. I'll send a lockdown alert here.
Attention, there's an intruder on campus. Follow lockdown procedure.
So you get the idea. That's the very top there, desk phone, trigger from a desk phone. Can be live, can be pre-recorded like that one. We can trigger from the mobile application. I'll show that here in a little bit. We can trigger from the web console or what we call command center, and so on. And then there's a lot of automated ways too, so tying into the physical world. Some of those are Internet of Things integrations, like early earthquake detection, which probably doesn't apply where you are, but maybe some of the other things do. Tying into your access control system, like your physical security system. Tying into NOAA for automated weather, and you can make that as granular as you would like. So both manual and automated triggers, and then a big part of our differentiation is on the right in terms of the message target. And that is in the sense that we send not only to your mobile devices, which what everybody does. There are literally 3-4 dozen companies that do that. We do that too. We also send to all of your on-premises devices, which is again why I'm sitting in this room, because we can bring all that to life here. We can send to speakers, we can send to phones, we can send to computer desktops, we can make them all light up, and we deliver intrusive audio, which is really important because if you're just sending text messages, a lot of those will one, they won't get there. People have phones turned off in a bag, briefcase, in poor cell coverage areas. But two, it's just not as intrusive, right? And so if you light up the room with sound, people are going to take action. So bringing this back to what we're all dealing with today, and I know this varies by state, it varies by town. Where we are here in Madison, Wisconsin, we're in Dane County, and we have a particular order in terms of face masks that's different than the rest of the state. So it just depends on your locality, right? And we know that things are happening differently in different parts of the country. You know, of course, started on the coast, particularly New York, but now we're seeing flare-ups in the pandemic in Texas, Florida, Arizona, et cetera, right? But regardless of where you are, you're affected by this in some way or shape or form, right? So you may have people falling sick, and we don't have a huge outbreak here where we are, but we are trending upwards. We're having a bit of a surge. And so we've had some of our people get sick. We've had just a handful. The grocery store 2 blocks from my house closed down for 2 days for a deep cleaning because they had a worker test positive. So if this hasn't happened in your area yet, it likely will, because it's pretty much happening everywhere. And so what we need to do is not panic, not sow fear, but we need to react with a plan. We need to know what we're doing, and we need to communicate with people to let people know what's happening. Because if you do have a positive test, you don't know when you're going to be notified of that, right? If that happens at 7 a.m. and you got people starting to show up to work at about that time, you got to let them all know exactly what's happening. So we have people that are working split shifts. We have one of our UX designers. He starts work at 1 p.m. and finishes at 9 because there is no childcare currently, and his wife is working from home as well, and they have to split childcare duties. So you just look at, these patterns are disrupted. Regular communication channels are challenged. Revenues and budgets are impacted because of the lack of room tax and sales tax and all of these things. In the short term, there's been a lot of funding that's been injected by the federal government to try to help places out, but we know that revenues and budgets are impacted, and particularly at the local level, cities and counties are really stretched because they don't have the same revenues, so their budgets, which in many cases just rolled over on July 1, are really impacted. And in the private sector, a lot of businesses are holding on to cash and conserving cash because they're not sure what the future looks like. So our message is use what you already have. Use those communication channels you already have. Put a layer of a service on top of that, like InformaCast, that can send messages to all the things you already have, and you can get a lot of bang for your buck that way. And we know now that mobile notifications are more important than ever. Again, I talked about what we do as being mobile plus on-premises notification, but at the moment, mobile is paramount. So we talk about improving worker communications. We're talking about reaching remote workers, which many of us are these days, right? I happen to be in the office today, But in this building that normally has 85 people, we get maybe a dozen a day. We haven't made it mandatory to come back. And so most of us are working from home. And we see this across our customers. And the one exception is healthcare, although even in that case, we had people, some of the spouses of the people and partners of the people that work here, they were furloughed because they all shut down expecting a COVID surge, which didn't happen early on. All the elective procedures were canceled, and so they were sent home as well. Now they're being called back, and because we are experiencing a bit of a surge. So you've got the remote worker thing for all the reasons we've talked about. You've got the empty building thing, so tying into those surveillance systems and automating things. One of my favorite stories about how InformaCast is used is we had a school district that was experiencing repeated damage to their buses. And the kids figured out if you broke into the school bus garage and you damaged some buses, they would call off school the next day because they couldn't transport the kids to school. So what they did is they tied the motion sensor into InformaCast and they put an IP speaker there. And now when they detected motion, it would tell them that the police had been notified the area was under video surveillance and they better scram. And it put an end to the problem. It was a relatively simple solution. And then you talk about preparing for reopening. And this is one of those things where this varies by industry, it varies by geography, but the gist of it is the same. You got to prepare. You have to have a plan. So it's just a series of if-then statements. If everyone's healthy, we do X. If we have someone test positive, we do Y. And what happens then? How long are we closed for cleaning? What do we do for testing? What do we do for notifying people? And then one thing we don't want to lose sight of is this pandemic isn't going to last forever. I mean, hopefully it's over tomorrow, but we all know it's going to continue for a little bit. And then when it is done, what do things look like then? It's a little bit of new normal. We probably will have a few more people, at least percentage-wise, working from home than we did prior to the pandemic. But the other thing that we know is that a lot of those use cases that we've worked with for years now, severe weather, workplace violence, those things are going to be there just like they were before. And so you need to have a system that can accommodate all of those and not just be something that hits you on your mobile phone. You want to bring in the on-premises as well. So let's talk about current notification trends and what we're seeing. We do know that business continuity risk is real, particularly small retail, which isn't an area that we deal with a whole lot, but it's an area that impacts the quality. It impacts the quality of life, for people in your communities. That's something that we all need to pay attention to. We also know that communicating with people in real time is really important and that people want to get those notifications back. So the message confirmation coming back is really important. We see our customers sending out a notification, asking about health status, and then sending a follow-up message dependent on what the answer was from the end user. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And when we get to the end, we have a whole website dedicated to coronavirus response, and I'll share that link with you. So a few more things about what's happening out there. We know that reopening is a rolling thing, right? So places are going to reopen. I think many places, at one point, less than a month ago, all 50 states were in some form of reopening. Some hadn't shut down at all, but that was just a handful. And all of them were in some form of reopening. Some have now had to shut back down. Miami is an example. Arizona is an example. I did a webinar last night for a partner in Melbourne, Australia. They just, that very day, 3 hours before the webinar, I read that they had just went back down into lockdown because they had a surge. So, and this is going to happen, until we get a vaccine, a cure, or herd immunity. This is going to happen. So this plant was like one of the first ones. This was kind of, this is in South Dakota, relatively early on, so probably late March. And so it just spread through here like wildfire. It was one of the first big outbreaks outside of New York or Washington. And then these are clipped from the headlines just in the last week or so. And so you're seeing this happen, and all you need to do is look at any reliable news source, and you'll see this. You'll see just a surge of news about the surges that are happening in different parts of the country. And so I think, again, something that started well, it started in China certainly, but then spread to Italy, and then in Italy to New York, and then from there to all these other places. We're all experiencing it. And so it's not a matter of if you're going to have to deal with it, it's just a matter of when, and then it's a matter of how. Again, not panicking, but having a plan. So I know it's a little bit of gloom and doom just in terms of like what we're all dealing with today. It's disrupted our lives. It has an impact certainly on our mental health because we're not able to see our family and friends in the same way that we used to. But there are some uplifting things. I'll just share this particular little story that came out of New York, came out of the Bronx. And when they were being hit really hard, it was a big deal when they could get a patient fully recovered and discharge them. So whenever that COVID patient was discharged, they wanted to play a bit of music for the staff and just for everyone, including the patient, celebrate. They contacted Court's counterpart, Tim Green, who handles New York State, on a Friday afternoon, and they said, we really want to be able to play this music on, using InformaCast, play it on the overhead speakers, play it on the phones, and celebrate. He's like, okay. And they already had InformaCast, so it was just a matter of configuring a message, attaching Alicia Keys' Empire State of Mind to the message, and then attaching that to a number that any of their staff members could dial to play the message. Well, they did that and they tweeted it out, and being smart folks, of course, they tagged Alicia Keys, and it went kind of viral from there. So you may have seen this, a couple months ago. All right, so moving on in terms of what we're seeing. Again, mobile is paramount. Many workers are working from home. In-building notification is a little less important now for many industries. Healthcare would be the exception. Certainly most manufacturers, especially in essential industries, are still working. We're also seeing collaboration tool growth by orders of magnitude. The top dark green there is Microsoft Teams, up nearly 900% since the start of the year. So a lot of people had Office 365 and they just turned on Teams. You see WebEx, which we're using, up nearly 500%. And of course, Zoom has become a verb that people are using both in business and in private life. And I'm not comparing the three. I'm just sharing data with you in terms of all these tools have just exploded, right? And we have hooks into both Cisco and into Microsoft tools. So if people are working all day, every day in these tools, it's really helpful to be able to alert them via those tools and have it pop up and take over their screen. And we'll show you how that works here in a moment. So now I'm going to share just a handful of slides on sample messages. So what are we seeing our customers send to their end users? This is from a healthcare system in the desert Southwest. And what they're asking people to do, they're asking their staff daily to confirm that they're healthy. And your first glance at this, like mine might be, well, they're healthcare providers, they're clinicians. They don't know that they're supposed to be healthy in order to care for people. But things are changed now, right? You think about many of us, just, you got a strong work ethic and you want to soldier on. And so you take some Tylenol and you go to work. Like if you had a little fever or a tickle in the throat or whatever. Well, now they're like, no, don't do that. You're going to be getting other people sick. So we want you to confirm they put in there that, the different symptoms. We want to confirm that you're healthy. And so they're having a daily confirmation before their shift starts that they're healthy. We're seeing this, they're scheduling a reminder. So there's a scheduling service inside of InformaCast. So you can just hit a button and send something, or you can have the system do it for you on a regular basis. A lot of schools use this for scheduling the passing bells. We have manufacturers that use it for shift changes and breaks and safety warnings. And you can see here we have a number of customers that are using it to remind their staff to sanitize the waiting area. If you've been to a place, I had to get my car serviced earlier today, and it's right before I came in, a guy came through with this spray bottle and paper towels and wiped stuff down. And then right after I got up, he did the same thing, right? So you can have people watching the area like a hawk, or you can schedule a reminder to make sure people don't forget, but that's what's happening here. And then just a handful of other sample messages. I included, two other songs that that healthcare providers are playing for COVID discharge. Here Comes the Sun and Rocky. I was not able to verify that the Rocky song was being played in Philadelphia. It could have been somewhere else, but they're having some fun with it, which is good, because it's good to celebrate beating a near-death experience, which is if you're in the COVID ICU, that's probably where you were. And we see different things happening, like, you know, I mentioned how just here where we are locally, we have a new mask policy going into effect on a county-wide basis on Monday. And organizations themselves are putting in different mask or face covering policies. And so notifying people of those, you know, as they're happening is important. We have customers who are sending out notifications of building shutdowns because there's a positive case, and then they're closed for a deep clean, and then they get their staff tested, and then they have to send out another notice saying, hey, we're back open. You know, we're seeing messages saying, show up to work tomorrow morning unless you have a positive test. You know, so it's just a seesaw back and forth. And we do have a desktop client that pops up to the front of all your windows on either Windows or Mac. And people are using that for daily notifications. That's particularly helpful because, again, you know, it's very intrusive. It pops to the front of your screen, and you can have it play audio at the speakers at the same time. So that's what we're seeing today, you know, like right now, happening out there with our customers. When you look at how things are likely to unfold in the future, we still very much believe that mobile plus on-premises is important. And, you know, the reason being that intrusive audio is really necessary for an effective message, and that's delivered through your in-building devices. You know, and we like to say, you know, if there was a fire, you're not just going to get a text message like, oh, building's on fire. I wonder, is this real? I wonder what I should do. No, you're going to get very loud audio and probably a strobe. And now with the new fire codes that are being adopted across the country, you're going to get a voice alarm as well, meaning it will say fire, proceed to the nearest exit. So that is really important, right? If we do that for fire, why don't we do that for active shooter? Why don't we do it for any other scenario that you care about? So speed matters in lots of scenarios. Speed matters in the case of, you know, panic button, active shooter, severe weather. And we don't see that changing at all. And now we're even seeing, as businesses are reopening, we're seeing in-building notification become all that much more important. We had a Native American gaming casino come to us just last week with a very urgent need because they are reopening and they needed to have much better control over their in-building notification. So example of use cases, right now, remote worker notification, regardless of industry, is very important, but a lot of the mainstays of notification that we've seen over the years are going to continue to be important. And we're going to see more and more of the IoT integrations as well as systems become smarter. So we can physically lock doors today if you have a lockdown. We can tie into existing digital signage. And on the inbound side, we have an ice cream producer. You know, they use ammonia to kill listeria bacteria at low temperatures, which is a good thing because no one wants to get listeria. The downside of using ammonia is that it can be really hazardous to breathe, as I'm sure you know. And so they monitor the concentration in the air. And it used to be that alarm would go off and only the people in the immediate area would know about it. Well, now when that alarm goes off, it ties into InformaCast and it sends a plant-wide notification letting them know which sensor went off and people can avoid that area. So I share that story because it tells you how you can use Internet of Things on the inbound side as opposed to just on the outbound side when we're locking doors. And by the way, I do highly recommend Blue Bunny's peanut butter panic flavor of ice cream. That's the customer. They're based in Le Mars, Iowa, which is French for the Mars. All right, so you don't have to go full blown if you're saying, I just need a mobile solution, right? Right now, my people are remote. I'm not worried about the phones and the desktops and the other stuff. You can start out with a service level that we have called InformaCast Mobile. And it's doing what all of our competition does, which is just reaching people on their mobile phones. And then if you say, well, in the future, I want to bump that up and I want to go to InformaCast Fusion, you can. So you can send not only to the mobile quadrant that you see there in the lower left, but you can send to all of the on-premises devices as well, to your speakers, your desktop, your phones, your signage, and to your collaboration tools. So know that you can walk before you run, and if it's a matter of speed to deploy or cost or whatever the case may be, you can get going with mobile, and then you can move up to InformaCast Fusion. That is a path that you can take. And again, just what we call our any-to-any diagram just showing the full capabilities of sending from the things on the left to the things on the right. So you're controlling all of this from something called Command Center, and I'm going to spend no time on this because I'm going to show this in just a moment. You have the capability of getting very robust reporting to understand where the message was sent, how long it took to get to each of the channels, whether that's calling, email, push, SMS, etc., and then who responded with what. And we'll show that here too in a moment. We have the desktop notification, so popping to the front of your windows, or in some organizations or some types of messages, you may not want it to be that intrusive. You might want it to just scroll as a banner across the top, or even pop in as a toast from the side, like many of us have for our email. And whether you're using Teams from Cisco or Teams from Microsoft, we have the ability to tie into both of those, as I mentioned earlier. And going back to that revenues and budgets being impacted statement, we have the ability to leverage what you already have. So we can tie into all these different things in our partner ecosystem. And so this is helpful regardless of whether you're tying into existing things or maybe you have a little gap. So for example, we can tie into your existing overhead paging systems. And if you have a series of buildings or sites, 10 sites or maybe 10 buildings on the same site, today those overhead paging systems are all independent and they're relatively unintelligent. We can tie into all of them. We can send one message at the same time to all of them, which can be really helpful in a number of different scenarios. And so we give new life to that. And we don't have to do anything other than integrate to it. We're not going to ever tell you to rip and replace a functioning overhead paging system. But if you take that same scenario and you say, hey, we've got all that stuff, but we have a couple areas that aren't covered real well, then you can add in an IP speaker like the ones you see on the wall here behind me. We have 10 manufacturers that build IP speakers. They are partners of ours. They use our patented protocol in the firmware of their speakers, and that gives us the ability to control the volume, to scroll text across them, to flash LED strobes, to do a better job at grabbing people's attention and so forth. That's just an example of one category. I'm not going to describe all of these for you. You'll see some of them here in action in a moment. And know that regardless of what industry you're in, again, 7,000 customers sending collectively more than 100 million messages a year, that we have the scale and the capability to help keep you safe. So here's our coronavirus resources page. And if you're thinking of copying down that URL, just go to our homepage, go to singlewire.com. There's a big orange banner right there, and you can click on that. It'll take you to this page. All right, we do have a free trial, and I encourage you to contact us for that. And rather than contacting us at sales, just get a hold of your account exec at Keller Schrader. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump over to the InformaCast console. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of a demo here. Clear off the screens here. And the first one I'm going to do is, let's go with the hazmat incident. Okay, so we'll click on hazmat incident. And this is a feature called Command Center. It's meant to be a simplified sending interface for whomever is going to be sending your messages, right? So it gives you a series of questions that you can answer. And this could be no questions, and you could just send it out. Or if you want to make it more flexible, you put in a couple of questions with some multiple choice or a free form box. You can say, I've got a sulfur dioxide issue at the South Campus, and we'll click review. And now it shows me where that's about to be sent in terms of what is the content, where is it going, what's happening after that. I want to click send. It's going to go up into the cloud, and it's going to come right back down to all the devices here.
Spill emergency. Follow the hazardous material procedure.
Okay. So you can see how that's scrolling across all the different devices here, and it's lighting them up. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take down the sharing for a moment. And the reason I'm going to do that is because we can get a little bit better screen real estate, kind of show you other things that are going on. So I'm going to zoom in here, the phone to my left. And I showed you how I hit that lockdown button at the lower left early at the very start of the webinar. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do an ad hoc message. And so this is what you see, when you're at the airport and the gate agent talks into the phone and then hangs it up, and then the message goes out, right? So this is helpful if you want to make sure you don't get any feedback. It's also helpful if you want to make sure that you don't send out a message where you've screwed it up. So high school principals like this because they can get their morning announcement down clean and then they hang up and then it goes out, and so they don't have any fumbling around. But in any case, I'll go ahead and trigger it here.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, please press pound. Press star to cancel at any time.
This is an InformaCast test message.
This is an InformaCast test message.
So you can see what I did there. I just recorded the message, I hit pound, everything was fine, so it went out. Again, just very simple audio message in this case. I'm going to mix things up a little bit. I'm going to show you what we can do when it comes to emergency call alerting, and specifically 911, although it could be any number that you want. If you have an internal security number that you want to monitor, you can do that as well. The reason we built this feature is because we were told by people that they had police, fire, EMS rolling up to the front desk or to the guard building and being asked to be directed to the emergency, and the people there didn't even know that 911 had been dialed and that the services had been called. So this is going to send an alert and let people know where it was dialed from.
Your call cannot be completed if dialed.
I have to dial the right number first. And you can see here, it told us exactly where that call came from, in this case from the phone of Ringo Starr. And this is really important. This actually saved a life at Joy Global P&H Mining, which is in Milwaukee, not far from Miller Park, where the Brewers play. And what happened there was they had a gentleman who was going into cardiac arrest on the plant floor. And it's a huge plant floor. They make really large mining equipment that's used in surface mining in places like Brazil and Australia. It's a giant plant floor. The guy's having cardiac arrest. He manages to get to the pole where there's a phone hanging, and he dials 911 and then he collapses. And normally, the guard desk wouldn't know about this. EMS would show up at the edge of the property, again, huge property, and they'd have to be directed to the emergency, but they wouldn't know where it was happening. But because they had InformaCast, it alerted the guard shack as to exactly where the call was dialed. They raced out there, they grabbed the defibrillator off the wall, and they shocked him back to life before the ambulance even arrived on the property. So you can see how seconds matter in a lot of different emergency situations, and in this case, it actually saved his life. So I'm going to show you a little bit of Internet of Things integration here. Behind me, I have a defibrillator cabinet, and if someone actually reaches for that cabinet and opens it up, it's probably a pretty big deal. They're probably under duress, and if someone's having a heart attack, and if that happens, whoever's responsible for safety of the organization probably wants to know about it. So instead of just flashing the light on top, we send it out to an InformaCast broadcast so everyone knows about it.
Medical alert. AED box has been activated in the demo room.
All right, so you can see how that works. We let everybody know what's going on there. And you can see the text scrolling across the different devices that we have here in the room, letting people know what's happening. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And in particular, I'm going to show you the InformaCast mobile application. And let me bring the video back to central as well. So you're at my mobile phone that I'm holding in my hand here. I just have it tethered to my machine so I can share the view. This is Command Center, so those same scenarios that I had in the web interface, I have here on my phone, so I can send from the mobile phone as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and send an all clear. Actually, let's go back. I'm going to do severe weather. And say what type of weather, and we're going to go with, well, we're in Wisconsin, so we're going with snowstorm, even though it's July, because you never know. And then we're going to say the all campus, click save. And now I can review that. It's going to show me exactly what I have here. So you can see as I scroll down, I'm using the severe weather message template. I've got the body of the message. I have the distribution list that it's going to. I could change any of this, but it looks good to me. So I'm going to click send. And it's going to go, again, up into the cloud and come right back down.
This is a severe weather emergency.
And what I should preface all of this really by saying that any of these messages are your own. The content is entirely your own. When you become a Singlewire customer and you get provisioned with either InformaCast, Mobile, or Fusion, there is a message pack in there that is specific to your industry. So there would be 6 or 8 healthcare messages, or 6 or 8 education focused or manufacturing focused messages. Those are in there preloaded. And those are just to help you along. And then our customer success folks will work with you to get the right messages in there. So we have a discovery workbook. What content are you sending? Who are you sending it to? What do you want to have happen after the fact? And who has permission to send it? And so you're going to make all of these messages entirely your own. As you saw from some of the sample messages earlier, I mean, those weren't preloaded. Those were things that people said, these are important to us, and these are things that we want to put in there. So just know that, you know, I'm showing you a variety of messages. You're like, well, I wouldn't want my lockdown message to sound like that. It's like, well, you don't have to. You can make it your own. You probably heard some of those were recorded in my voice. I customize those on my own demo server. We have other people here that understandably hate my voice and re-record those and make them entirely their own. So you can do it however you would like. So that really concludes the main part of the presentation and the demonstration. We have plenty of time to answer your questions. So I'll call on Court and ask Court, do we have any questions that have come in that we can answer for the folks that have attended the webinar?
No, Pat, I'm not seeing that in the chat box here. Mallory, are you seeing anything that I'm not?
I do have a couple. The first one, they want to know how is paging handled at remote locations.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you can send a message from one location to whatever location you want to send it to. So you do have the ability to, for example, you could put a button on the phone that was a panic button that would only send the alert at that location. Similarly, I could make it granular so when I hit that ad hoc message, it's only sending it to my location. Or you could make that, and this is just configurable by the administrator, you can make it so it went to multiple locations. So you have the ability to mix and match. You can have, and you can create what are called nested groups. So if you wanted to have, say, location A, B, and C, and then you wanted to create a combination of those, like roll all 3 of them up, for example, you could certainly do that too.
Awesome, thank you. The next one we have is there an SRST option for when the WAN goes down?
Yeah, so SRST is a Cisco term, Survivable Remote Site Telephony. And so when your wide area network link is dropped for whatever reason, then you want the system to keep working, right? And we do have something like that. We refer to ours as SRSN, so Survivable Remote Site Notification, a very close cousin of SRST, of course. And so what we're really doing there is you're going to have an appliance. Typically, we make what's called an InformaCast Fusion appliance, or if you have VMware running at the edge, it can run as a virtual appliance. And if you lose that wide area network connectivity, then the local paging type functions will still work. So your panic button off the phone will work, your audio will work. If you're a school and you're running your bells, or a manufacturer and you're running your shift change notifications, those things will work. What will not work, because there is no network connectivity to get it there, is I can't pick up the mobile phone and send a notification from the mobile phone and have it reach the remote site, right? Because there's no connectivity. The thing's an island at that point. But those things that are self-contained within that island, most notably those things that are similar to old school paging, those will continue to work.
Awesome. So last but not least, unless anyone has any more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We have, what size company is InformaCast best fit for?
What was it, size? Is that the question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Size.
Yeah, it really runs the gamut. I mean, we have customers that have less than 100 users, and we have customers that have 80,000, you know, as the largest, I believe. And so it really runs the gamut. I would tell you that if you only have 40 people in your organization, your mass notification system might be to stand up and shout. So we're probably not a great fit if you're really small. But if you're medium, if you're 100 on up, it's probably really important that you're getting in touch with people on a very regular basis, especially with everything that we're dealing with, right? So having that sort of communication is really important. And it does snap into organizations large and small. It's a relatively easy add-on. Again, especially if you just want to start with the InformaCast mobile and then move up to Fusion from there. It's an easy way to get started. So, and then it's just a matter of how many integrations do you want to do. And I should say that if you're wondering, like, what does this cost, you can go to our website. If you go to singlewire.com/pricing, it's very transparent. We will, of course, that will give you a budgetary idea. And the folks at Keller Schrader can dial that in and give you a much firmer idea. But if you're just, if you want to say, well, what does this cost? It's priced per user per year. And those numbers are on that pricing tab on our website. So we try to be very transparent about that. The thing I can tell you, though, is because of the way we price, what is really nice about it is as you add more integrations. So you say, I want to tie into that ammonia sensor like the people at Blue Bunny did, or if I want to tie into, my locking my doors, we don't charge for those types of integrations, right? So you're paying per user per year. The more you add to it and get out of it, more use cases. We don't charge by messages created or messages sent or any of that sort of thing. So it's only metered, really, based on users. And so you're not going to be paying for getting more out of the system. And I think that's important because what we see so many customers do is they start out and they're trying to really solve for one or two business use cases for that 911 call alerting thing, which is really important to a lot of people for safety reasons. Or they want to have something in place if they have an active intruder type event. And then once they have it in place, then they're like, well, it'd be great if we could notify people about X, Y, or Z. The pandemic was a key one. A lot of our customers contact us, weren't using a whole lot of the mobile, and then they popped up and said, we're all remote, what do we do? We said, you have the capability to do this. Fusion gives you the capability of sending to on-premises and mobile. So having that flexibility in the system is really key. And we see people pop up and do that all the time. Like, we have a new use case, how do we solve it? Well, InformaCast can help you with that.
Awesome. Well, I don't have anything else. Court, did you have any other questions come to you?
Nope, don't see any at this time.
All right. Well, like Pat said, if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to your account manager. You can connect with us. We're on all social media platforms, especially Facebook and LinkedIn. And of course, we will be sending you this recording of the webinar to your email by the end of the week. So you'll have it to pass on or rewatch if you want. So I just thank you guys for your time today, and I appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you.